don't have your video on, but I just want to welcome everyone here this evening. It seems a little bit strange to be on a computer screen still after 6 months, where we're normally having these events in hotels and chatting about the wonderful place as the land of the Bible, Israel. But we're very grateful for the Israeli Government Tourist Office, who look after us and help us in every way to promote the land that we love. I'm going to Israel again in April, God willing, to take a group through the Galilee region. And my tour is called Go Tell It on the Mountain, because we all know that most of our New Testament Gospels are based around the Galilee region and Jesus' ministry. So I'd just like to welcome Amit, who is going to take you on a virtual tour of Galilee. Now, this virtual tour is very much geared to everyone. It's not specific to us just as a company, but they are working alongside us on Faith and Culture Tours to give you a little bit of an insight into what it is like to visit Galilee. It's my favorite place. It's my favorite part of Israel. It's unspoilt and untouched. And everywhere you put your foot, you can see that Jesus has walked there. So I'm going to hand over to Amit now and let him take you on a virtual tour. It will last for about an hour, and I know he does have some questions at the end, and you may have received a link if you wanted to send any emails of questions earlier. But that Ron and Menno will keep us posted with regard to that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is much better than Coronation Street. So you're going to have a really good time for the next hour. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Amit, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Amit Musaei. Just to tell you quickly about my name, Amit means a friend, and it's an obligation. We have to be friends right now. If you don't like me, you can unfriend me at the end of the tour, but we're doing now an online tour together. It's gonna take about approximately 1 hour, probably a bit more. Questions and answers we will do at the end of the tour. I'd highly appreciate if you would keep yourself muted during the tour, unless there is something very urgent. I'm monitoring myself, so if there is any malfunction, I'll probably know, but if you don't see my screen from some reason, please unmute yourself and let me know. And I hope you all enjoy this tour to the Sea of Galilee area. It will take me just a few more seconds to start the screen sharing. All right, that's great. So I hope you can see my screen right now. Just nod or do your thumbnail up so I can see that you're receiving the same signal that I do. Great, awesome, thank you. So you see my screen right now. If you want, it's up to you how much of your screen would be filled with my presentation and how much of it would be with my face, which is not very important unless you want to see some face gestures that I do from time to time. Anyway, that you can control on your own Zoom. You have on, should be on your right upper corner a button when you click view, and then you choose what kind of view you want to see. If you want to see the gallery view with all of the other participants, and it's good to see your videos on, thank you for putting them on, or just to see the speaker view side by side with the screen shared by me. And let's start. So we're starting this tour with an overview about Israel, just to give you a sense of where we are located. We are by the Mediterranean Sea. This is what you see on your left side of your screen. That's Israel western border. On the east, we have the Jordan River. Let me open the map for you. We have the Jordan River from north almost all the way to Israel southern tip. We have the Jordan River flowing through, also the Dead Sea where it ends, and then from here to here we have Israel Arava Valley, all part of the Great Rift Valley. Please remember that we will probably speak about it during the tour. Part of it is the border of Israel with Jordan. Part of it are the western slopes of the Golan Heights that we're going to see during the tour. And then on the eastern end of the Golan Heights, we have the border with Syria. Northern to Israel, we have the border with Lebanon. The western border of Israel is a natural border, which would be the Mediterranean. And then from Gaza southern tip to Israel southern tip at the Red Sea, we have the border with Egypt. Today, we're going to focus on the Sea of Galilee, and for just a few minutes at Nazareth. Basically, we're going to be at the Galilee area, which is the northern area of Israel. So we're focusing this territory here today. And just to give you idea of the size of Israel, it's about the size of Wales. That's 22,000 square kilometers. Population of Israel is about 9 million people. The length of Israel, 420 kilometers, and the widest area is 115 kilometers. Let's dive in towards the city of Nazareth. So the tour today is not about Nazareth, but about the Galilee. And I'm showing you now in the area of the modern city of Nazareth, which is the biggest Arab city in Israel. That would be non-Jewish city. Majority of the residents of Nazareth are Muslims nowadays. Minority are Christians. With population of about 70,000. The city of Nazareth is between valleys, and that would be the, we can say, the southest city in the Galilee area. In Nazareth, we have a place which is a touristic attraction named the Nazareth Village. At the Nazareth Village, one can find a place that was recreated to simulate the village of Nazareth at the 1st century AD. I'm showing you that because this would relate with one of the sites that we would explore today at the Sea of Galilee. So the picture should change in just a few seconds. And what you see now is very modern building that simulates what used to be the architecture of the 1st century AD. We can see a doorway towards a room in a house in Nazareth. Let me show you some of the idea of the Nazareth village, which is a touristic attraction. This is a place that you come to visit and to find more or less how would be the lifestyle of Nazarethian or a Galilean person in the 1st century AD, in the time that Jesus walked on earth. So we can see a courtyard with a place to make all the cooking, for example. I want you to note the rooftop. That would be important for our visit in Capernaum. See the wooden pieces here holding to some straw, perhaps. We can see a carpenter in Nazareth and look at the nice tools that he's using. Very authentic tools of 1st century AD. And we can see the wine pressing celebration, for example. All right. Now I'm showing you Nazareth because in Nazareth, Jesus started his journey towards the Sea of Galilee. He lived in Nazareth. He was growing in Nazareth as a young boy, perhaps as a teenager, and then he proceeded, after he had to leave Nazareth, he proceeded towards the Galilee, and he ministered through all over the Galilee area. I'm just waiting for the picture to change. Sometimes it takes some time. All right. Yes, I get. Sorry. Let me restart the screen sharing. So we will move to the Sea of Galilee in few seconds. And then over there, we will see the route that took Jesus from Nazareth to the Sea of Galilee. That's a route that is possible to make in perhaps 1 day walk, possibly 9 hours walk. It's not very difficult route, and this is what we're going to see soon. At the Sea of Galilee, we're going to experience the sites that Jesus have visited according to the Bible, but Scripture is not revealing for us all the places that Jesus have been to. It's just showing us partly, just some of the places. For example, it speaks about Chorazim, it speaks about Beit Saida. It does not speak about Magdala, which was a very huge a place, a city in the territory of the Sea of Galilee. Now I'll try to again share my screen with you. Sorry for this. Just a second. I'm sorry, deeply sorry for this. All right. And you should see my screen again. Great. We'll skip what we've done so far. And now I'm going to show you just the route that is leading from Nazareth to the Sea of Galilee. So approximately that would be the route that Jesus took. He went from this hilly area of Nazareth. Approximate elevation of Nazareth is 300 meters above sea level. Just want to see if there were more people trying to join the meeting. All right, and just to show you quickly this diagram, it's explaining for us the structure of the Galilee area. If you've been, you probably remember in the Galilee, from the Sea of Galilee to your hotel, maybe in Tiberias, or to your traveling through the area of Nazareth. And if you have not been to Israel yet, this is the time to book your trip for hopefully a few months from now. Those are the Nazareth Mountains, and we have valley here. The light green is a valley. Valleys would lead people, or the main routes would be in the valleys, into the Sea of Galilee through the valley or the canyon of Arbel, which is right over here. And we are visiting today the northern tip of the Sea of Galilee. Let's proceed. So following this yellow line, and we are visiting now the area of Mount of Beatitudes. That's the area to be visited. We have just few just join us, so welcome to those who just join us. That's the Mount of Beatitudes area. We are at the northern tip of the Sea of Galilee. That's the Sea of Galilee, this fresh water lake, this body of water, which was also very important for the survival of the state of Israel in its early years. Israel water consumption, almost 50% of it was supported by this lake of fresh water. And it is also, if to speak just quickly about the contemporary Israel, if you see the dashed line over here, this is the old border between Israel and Syria prior to the war of 1967. But let's focus now on the Mount of Beatitudes, located just a bit northern to the shoreline. And at the Beatitudes, we know about the Sermon on the Mount. So nowadays, on this, traditionally, that would be the place of the Beatitudes. Traditionally, to those who decided to create a church here, that would be the Catholic Church. They've decided this could be a nice position, a nice spot to claim as the Beatitudes location. We have no idea where the Beatitudes actually happened. We do know it happened on a mountainside in a place that masses could gather. So you can see on this mountaintop, we have an area that could hold to a big gathering, and below we have the Sea of Galilee, and the shores are not so far away. If we'll just look around us, we can see on the left side, that would be east now that I'm facing, those are the Golan Heights, and somewhere over here we have Capernaum, which was claimed as the town of Jesus. Jesus was pushed out of Nazareth by his own people, by the Nazarethians, and they didn't want him over there because of his reading at the synagogue that was for them heard like, I am the Messiah. So they didn't want him and they pushed him out of the town. And then he started to wander at the area of the Galilee, and his ministry is between what you see over here. Those are the Galilee mountains. The southern tip on this picture is not very well seen. It's somewhere around here. And look at the beautiful agricultural land that we have here. This is really an abundant land where nowadays we grow mostly olives. We grow tropical fruits just because of the um, climate here, which is suitable. If I'll zoom in just a bit, I want to show you this. You may see now, once the picture will change, yes, you can see this V-shaped valley, this canyon here. That would be the Arbel Valley. And most probably Jesus made his way from Nazareth, somewhere behind those mountains, through this valley and arrived to this area here. So we are at the Beatitudes, and here Jesus made a lecture or a ceremony. He was speaking as a Jewish rabbi to masses of people who were in not a very good situation. They were suffering from not having a direct connection with God anymore, because as Jesus claimed, the temple was corrupted, and on the other hand, they were suffering from a Roman rule. We'll have to remember that during the time of Jesus, and even a bit before Jesus was born, we are speaking on the Roman era. That is an era in the land of Israel that was taken by Gentiles, by non-Jews, and they've controlled the land, they've taxed the people, and they also introduced a Gentile culture, a pagan culture. So the Jews were not accepting that, specifically because about a century before they were free. It was the Hasmonean kingdom, a Jewish kingdom, and they were free men. They were under Jewish rule, and now it's hard for them to accept again being under non-Jews. So all this situation have brought them to a point of agony, and they were seeking for help. In that time, Jesus have came and promised them the help. He spoke with them and told them that even the meek and the poor, they were the one to receive the kingdom of heaven. That was said over here at the Beatitudes. So just to speak quickly about the architecture here, not because we are highly interested in this very modern Catholic church, which was built in the 1930s, but because how this church was built is related to how churches were like after Jesus ascended to heaven. When speaking of a church, usually what you would like to see or expecting to see would be a basilica, a long rectangular building with colonnades on both sides. The altar would be at the end, and that would be the type of a church building in the Byzantine age. The Byzantine age would be immediately after the Roman era. So we spoke about Roman era, an era of pagans. Then the things are changing in the land of Israel since the 4th century AD and until the 7th century AD. We have the Byzantine rule, which is a Christian rule. You can call it even Roman Christian rule. Romans who converted to Christianity and accepted Christianity as their religion, and later on it became to be the only religion accepted in the Byzantine Empire. So now that we have Christians, they built churches in this style, and that is the style that is still continued by many ways in modern Catholic and even Eastern Orthodox churches. What we have here at the Beatitudes, we have Antonio Berluzzi, which is an Italian architect in the 1930s, designing this church on the location of the Beatitudes, and it is not a basilica, it's much different. What he had in mind is to create the altar at the center of the church, and maybe to suggest in his artistic idea, Jesus was standing in the center. Later on, he sacrificed himself, so this is the position of the altar, the place of sacrifice. So we have Jesus standing somewhere in the center in that beautiful view that you saw before, and soon we will go back there. And over there, he preached to the masses that were surrounding him, like people who are coming to this Catholic church are coming nowadays. Not just Catholic people are coming to the Beatitude Church just because of the location that allows you to see Jesus' ministry. One more thing about the architecture here is something that Jesus spoke about at the Beatitudes. He spoke about the kingdom of heaven, which was promised to all. So the golden color here is like to represent the kingdom of heaven in the Beatitudes Sermon of the Mount. We'll proceed now outside of this church, and we're still at the Beatitudes. If you've been at the Beatitudes at this specific location, you probably remember this view. This is a picture that was taken during the summer, and this is where you get off your bus when you come out from your previous visit to another site here at the Galilee, maybe from the sites that we're going to right now. We see the Golan Heights, and just to show you that the atmosphere is a bit different during the winter. So that's a winter picture of the same location. Looking towards east, those are the Golan Heights over there. And just a second, the picture will change. Yes, now you can see that. And another photo from the winter. This is a picture taken from a boat ride at the Sea of Galilee. You can do boat rides at the Sea of Galilee to stop the boat, to look at Jesus' ministry sites, and to have a ceremony yourself. Those are the Golan Heights at the winter time when they are green. Most year they are yellow and dry, like in this specific picture. So that's the area of the Beatitudes, and you can just imagine, even on this picture, maybe where this palm tree is standing nowadays, surrounded by masses and speaking to them and giving them hope. The Sermon on the Mount was a sermon of giving people hope, not just by word, but also by feeding people in masses. So this is the Beatitudes, and we'll proceed from here to our next site to be visited. We are leaving the Beatitudes, and if you are on a motor coach, you're traveling with a bus, this would be approximately 5 minutes drive or up to 10 minutes drive from the Beatitudes down through the road and into Capernaum, which I don't really like to use the word. I would call it in its Hebrew name, with your permission. You're muted, you can't give me your permission, but I'll do it anyway. So, Kfar Nahum. Kfar Nahum. Kfar means a village in Hebrew. Nahum is someone's name, but not just someone. We know Nahum, who was a prophet, but also, if we don't believe that this place was named after this famous prophet Nahum from a biblical era, we can just say that Nahum, and I've introduced myself, I told you my name is Amit, and in Hebrew the meaning is a friend. Almost every Hebrew name has a meaning. Nahum means, and you can see it here, I hope you can read, Kfar Nahum. Nahum means comfort. So, village of comfort. Besides that, I'm just gonna leave the area for a short while and show you a map. And this map is showing us the roads of the ancient world, and in the area that we speak about the 1st century AD. Look at this purple line running from here. That's Egypt. River Nile over here. That's Egypt. From Egypt ran a road up through the River Nile Delta, by the coastal plains of the Sinai Peninsula, by the coastal plains of the land of Israel, and at some point took a turn towards the Galilee and around the Sea of Galilee northern tip right here, crossing the Jordan River, proceeding to Damascus. This road is an ancient road quoted in ancient books. We know of early Egyptians using this road towards the land of Israel. This is a trade route and one of the most important trade routes of the ancient world. This trade route name is the Via Maris, the road of the sea, which travels between the two most dominated empires or civilizations in ancient times, the Empire of Egypt and the empires of Mesopotamia. I'm pointing at right now. You can probably recognize some of the cities from the Bible: Ashur, Babylon, Nineveh, Haran, where Abraham came from, and more cities are here. Damascus is just a junction, and the purple line ends in Damascus, joining another road. So people would use this route to travel from Mesopotamian cities, even in Roman era, towards Egyptian cities over here, enjoying the comfortable route of the coastal plains, the comfortable route around the Sea of Galilee, which is quite flat. You don't have to climb up and down mountains. And besides spreading their merchandise that they are trading, they would also spread ideas. Remember, there is no media back then. The way to transport media, to transport news, is to speak with people. And some of it we are missing today during those lockdowns and Corona era. All right, look at this map, please. And please focus here. This is like zooming into the area that I've showed you before. Sea of Galilee, you should already recognize, it's right here. That's the northern tip of the Sea of Galilee. And the Jordan River, that's the Jordan River, from this body of water, which is not existing anymore, to the Sea of Galilee, that's the Jordan River. And the Jordan River is a natural barrier, a border. Even in modern times, this was used to be the border between Israel and Syria. I can show you again soon in the map. But look here, this is a territory belonging to one of Herod's sons. After Herod the Great died, his sons have inherited the land, and at the northern tip of the Sea of Galilee was the border between their territories. Every son received a different part of the land, and this territory here is of Herod Antipas in light orange. In purple over here, that's the territory of Herod Philip or Herod Philippus. If you know the site of Caesarea Philippi, it is in the territory of Philippi. It's actually right over here. I can point for you on the map. But I want to speak about the border because the border is important here. Another way to explain the border is to say that the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River are located in the Rift Valley. They are actually a result of tectonic movements, as the Galilee is on the western shores of the Sea of Galilee and the Golan Heights on the northern shores, and this rupture have created the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee itself. But this is really ancient history, and to go back to our third site, I want to explain also the Via Maris. Remember the road of the sea that takes a turn around in the Sea of Galilee northern tip. This is the same modern road that we see today. That's the straight line that you see here that runs just next to the village of Nahum, Kfar Nahum, or Capernaum if you like. And this road continues. I'll move it just a bit for you to see how it crosses over the Jordan River. That's the Jordan River we now see. Yes, which is the natural border, used to be the border between Antipas and Philippus territories, and also used to be the border between Israel and Syria between 1949, end of Israel independence war, till 1967. Now the border with Syria is more eastern on the Golan Heights. So it's a natural border, and Kfar Nahum, Capernaum, was, and I think it still is, the first location that you would meet after crossing the border. So it was a border town. A lot of people would travel here. Many of them would have to stay and sleep here, using their accommodation or using the hotels. Some of them would have to be quarantined because they come with livestock, and people want to check, hey, stop, we want to check that your livestock is not gonna bring viruses into our territory, and so on, and paying taxes and so on. And you probably can quote one story about a tax collector here in Capernaum. Anyway, after this very long introduction to Kfar Nahum or Capernaum village, let's see what we have there. So there is a lot of archaeology here. We will focus on 3 of the archaeological sites, which are all part of the same village, although they are from different eras. So we know that Jesus was at Kfar Nahum, and it is claimed as his hometown. After he left Nazareth, this is where he stayed at. Where exactly he stayed, we cannot say for sure in 100%, but because of the archaeology, the remnants of history that we have here, we have quite a good idea. And why he decided to claim Capernaum as his own hometown, it's related to my introduction. So I'll get to there soon. So behind those bars and under a modern Catholic church that we have above us, now you can see the church windows. We have some remnants. Those remnants go back to Byzantine age. Just to remind you, the Byzantine age is the era when Christianity was already permitted and was the religion of the empire back then. That would be the Eastern Roman Empire. Without going into the details of the historical atmosphere and culture, just to explain that before Byzantine Empire, before the year 324 AD, those who followed Jesus and accepted him as the Messiah, those who saw him ascending from Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, they went to worship in the sites that he was at. In some places, they were worshiping in what we would call Domus Ecclesia, a home church or house church. And this piece of stone that we have here behind those bars is most probably, not definitely, but most probably the site where Jesus stayed at. If we go to Matthew 8, 14, 16, I'm just reading for you. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him. To where? To Peter's mother-in-law house. Peter was from Beit Saida. His mother-in-law lived in Kfar Nahum, not far away from Beit Saida. And this is where he decided to stay at. He stayed in her home. And this place became to be a home church where people were worshiping secretly in what later, during Byzantine age, became to be a proper church. If you remember, I told you the churches in Byzantine age were built like a basilica, although there were some irregularities, and the church on the place where Jesus was at in Kfar Nahum is this irregularity. What we see here, we see 3 octagonals. That's the first one, the inner one, the central. We see the second one, and we see the third one. Together, they create those corridors that people could go around. And eventually what you would receive here is something that might have looked like, just a second, this. And this is the Beatitudes that we saw, very modern, but built in a Byzantine style centric church. So perhaps something like this have stood here in Kfar Nahum to represent the place where Jesus was at. If this is the exact place or not, I won't be the one to assure you that, but we can be quite positive about this assumption just because of this very ancient relic. What we have above us is a modern church. At the modern church, it looks like this. For me, it's kind of a spaceship, but that's the Catholic Church, which allows both to enjoy the views surrounding us, and also it has a lower window that allows people to see into the center, into the room where Jesus was with Peter's mother-in-law, healed her, and later on healed others, as we're going to see soon. So what's the relation of the Via Maris and the road that is still being used today and this border town? Imagine that Jesus was not choosing his place just, randomly. Everything that he said, everything that he did had something to do with the Bible. That's the Old Testament, the past, and also with the future. Once he was here, preaching here, speaking with people here, spreading his ideas, spreading his gospels, his ministry, he was not just speaking with Jews directly, as we might think in the Bible. Many times it seems that he preached and ministers in synagogues, but later on we see that his disciples, the apostles, have went outside from the Jewish communities and preached among others. And Jesus have probably done the same, speaking in the synagogue of Kfar Nahum, which was a Jewish town. He was also speaking with Gentiles who came in the Via Maris road from anywhere from Egypt to Mesopotamia, from Nineveh in Mesopotamia to Memphis in River Nile in Egypt. He could speak to much more people, and in this way he would spread his word, and the word would spread even in the time of Jesus to Gentiles, not just in the time of his disciples and the apostles. All right, I've moved from the church that you now recognize over here and into the archaeology that we have here. This archaeology is very similar to how where the house of Peter's mother-in-law was located. It's just here, located on the same area. It is a residential area of Kfar Nahum. There is also the industrial area, but that's the residential area. And what we see here is not very easy to explain, so I'm going to use some models. And typically, that's a cut, a cross cut through a typical house of the 1st century AD, what we call the four quarters house or 4 rooms house. Let me count them for you. That's the 1st quarter over here. That's the 2nd one, the assembled, so it's like the rooftop for you to see what's happening inside. We have the 3rd one, which is over here, and the open court in the middle. That would be the doorway, and that would be a typical home at the 1st century AD. You have the place of the livestock, and over there you would also have the manger, if to relate to the place where Jesus was born. To differ from what they show us in Bethlehem, the Nativity Church, he was not probably to be born in a cave, but in a home. This is where the houseworks would be done, and I showed you something similar to that in the Nazareth village. This is the place where you would store your wine, your oil, and that would be the bedroom over here. Bedrooms could be also on the lower level, and you have those balconies which are made, the rooftop is made from wooden slabs. Above them, you would put pieces of straw, and then you would put something to cover them from rain. It could be mud, it could be tar, whatever you have available in the territory. And imagine this is a typical house in Kfar Nahum, not in this specific color, but in the color that you see here, which is the Basilate stone. It's a volcanic area. The Rift Valley in the north is with a lot of volcanic activity, not anymore, but back in the history of the area. So we have remnants of those houses that most probably looked like this in the inside. Look at those wooden pieces, those beams holding to straw pieces. What this relates to? It relates to this phrase. So I'm reading from Luke 5, and I'm skipping some of the verses here. I'll try to zoom and to see if I can enlarge the text for you. I can, great. All right, so when Jesus was teaching in Kfar Nahum, some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a mat and tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, imagine masses over the doorway of a house similar to one that I showed you, they could not find a way in. They went up to the roof and lowered him on his mat through tiles into the middle of the crowd right in front of Jesus. When Jesus saw their faith, he said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." And then the paralyzed man started to walk. I'm not going to read the rest, but I want to speak about how was that possible. Every house, and just to put you in Israel's atmosphere right now, besides of the lockdown that we are in, we are also in the holidays of Tishrei. Tishrei is the Jewish month between mid-September to mid-October, when we have Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. We have Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and then on this Friday, we're going to celebrate Sukkot, the Fest of the Tabernacle. If you are not familiar with the Fest of the Tabernacle, what happens during this festival? Every Jewish man, every Jewish family would have to commemorate the desert dwelling of the Israelites from Egypt towards the Promised Land, the land of Canaan. Once they were in the desert, they were living in tabernacles, in temper-made houses. And the godly law from the book of Moses is you need to commemorate that by living outside of your comfortable home, outside of your home, and create a place where you can see the stars of the sky above you. How is that possible in this sealed rooftop? This is the reason that on the Fest of the Tabernacle, they could take some of the straw pieces outside and they would have in home, very kosher by the way, tabernacle sukkah, and that would allow them to celebrate tabernacle. Very similar to how the owners of the home could take off the straw pieces, they could do the same if someone comes from the rooftop, let's say from here, takes off the wooden slabs, the straw pieces, and introduce the paralyzed man into the place where Jesus was sitting. Either it would be here or here, wherever it was possible to do so. So this comes directly with with Luke chapter 5. We'll proceed now to see this site still we are in Kfar Nahum. This is the synagogue of Kfar Nahum. You can see here how the synagogue probably looked like. There is a debate among historians and archaeologists about when this synagogue is dated to. Is it dated to the Byzantine age? Is it dated to afterwards? It doesn't matter for us. It's most probably not the synagogue that Jesus was preaching at when he was here in Kfar Nahum. But as we know, he ministered in synagogues all around the Galilee. So this would give us an idea of how a first century or even later a synagogue would look like. Maybe not as fancy as this one, and this would be considered quite a fancy synagogue, although some of the pillars are missing. You should take in mind it looked like something that I'm showing you currently. So two levels and even an open court to see those three doorways. And this is most probably how the synagogue looked like when it was still intact. Why everything is so ruined, you may ask? That is because we are on the Rift Valley area. We are like on the rift itself. So here there are a lot of tectonic movements, and even the easiest earthquake would create a destruction, specifically when we speak of earlier eras architecture, which was not suiting for earthquakes as much as we today. So those are the three doorways that you can see here at the model. And it's probable that Jesus was speaking, if not from this specific synagogue, maybe on the same location, on an earlier version of a synagogue. And you can see in Mark 1, specifically, it's speaking of they came to Kfar Nahum, Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. Why would he do that? Because he's a Jew, a Jewish person, a Jewish rabbi, as he was concepted by most people back then. He was concepted as a great rabbi. He's coming to the synagogue, and at the synagogue, you read from the Torah, you take the Torah scrolls, and you teach what the Torah means, and sometimes what the Torah means for our lives, how it reflects on our lives. And this is what Jesus done here in Kfar Nahum. All right, so we're moving from Kfar Nahum, and I want you to notice that we are still on the same road, very modern today, used to travel from one side to the other side of the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee. That's the Jordan River over here. That's the Sea of Galilee northern tip, and that's the road, the same Via Maris road that brought also non-Jews into Kfar Nahum, and Jesus could speak to them as well. Now we are focusing, for the last 5 minutes that we have, we are focusing on the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee northern tip. This area here where you see this agriculture is called Tabcha. Tabcha, it's an Aramaic word, as Jews were using Hebrew to speak with each other. If you want to speak with non-Jews, you would probably use Aramaic, which was the international language back then. Like I use English today to speak with you guys, and I'm not using Hebrew because then you would not understand me. So Aramaic was the international language back then, and this was also affecting some of the places' names. So here in Tabcha, Tabcha in Aramaic would be translated to Sheva in Hebrew, in English, 7. There are 7 springs here, 7 springs of kind of salty water that goes down towards the Sea of Galilee, and the location is named after them. We have many biblical quotes about Tabcha. I'm just gonna use one of them. So when you visit Tabcha, this is one of the churches that are here. We're not entering this church. It's modern church. It's 19th century Catholic church. But I do want you to see the environment and the area, and I hope I'm going to surprise you. So what is quoted about Jesus' resurrection, he was seen walking over the water. Peter was to see him from the boat. You can see the boat in the distance. There is a boat over there, trust me. It's a touristic boat. You can take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. We are looking to the south right now. And also, as I'm speaking, I want you to see the water level. You can compare it to a next picture that I'm going to show you. So see the eucalyptus tree over here, or the rocks, and the water level, because I'm going to surprise you with something as after. Anyway, so Jesus was seen on the water. Peter jumps off the boat, swims towards the shore, where he sees from far away Jesus is making a fish meal. He's cooking fish on coals. It is impossible to see, even if it's fire, it's impossible to see someone on the beach from far away in the water, because the local rocks are those gray, black rocks, volcanic stones, basaltic stones. The only place, let me show you some rocks here. I hope you can see. And just a second, the picture will change. Yes, you can see the color of the rock. Most definitely, it's not very white in color or light in color. What is different is that here in Tabcha, because of those 7 springs I told you about, we have those stones here, those natural rocks, a result of the springs. It's mostly containing calcium, which is white or very light in color mineral, and it is highly probable that the place that Jesus cooked his fish meals over coals would be somewhere over this rock, and that's the reason also there is a church now to commemorate that event. So this is when Jesus is asking Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" against the 3 times that he denied him in the house of Caiaphas. All right, what else do I have to I want to show you here? Something which is more modern Israel. So our concern as Israel is the water level of the Sea of Galilee. Although Israel is not using as much as in the past the water of the Sea of Galilee to the Israeli and the agriculture and so on, still the Sea of Galilee is a concern for us. If we lack of water here, a lot of Israelis would be depressed. At least the fishermen of the Sea of Galilee see the water level in the year 2015. 2015, if you remember the eucalyptus tree in the previous picture, that's the eucalyptus tree, the water were somewhere over here. See, it's more than 10 meters below what we see here in this picture, and people would have to walk on those not very comfortable stones in order to get to the water. And abundance of rains have came in 2018 winter, and even furthermore in the winter of 2019, and continuously, hopefully that would be in the next winter. And now the water level of the Sea of Galilee is much higher, to the and that brings a smile not just on the people that live up north here, but on every Israeli, because as I told you, even until like 15 years ago, our main water source was the Sea of Galilee. 15 years ago, Israel have converted to support itself on desalinating water from the Mediterranean. All right, the last thing I would like to show you is this. In another occasion of drought years, when the Sea of Galilee went even below the level that I showed you right now, the water were muddy, and 2 not professional archaeologists, fishermen, went on the shores and were looking to see what they can get out of the water level that went down. And they find in the water something in an oval shape under the mud. They realize that there is something there. They start to dig with their hands and they find pieces of wood. They stop immediately. They call the Israeli Antiquities Service and they call professionals, and then they dig out this piece that you see here. This piece is a shield of a boat from anywhere between the 1st century BC to the 1st century AD. So the design, at least, is the same design that Jesus and his disciples used as a boat to float over the Sea of Galilee water, to travel from one side to the other side, and also to go for fish. So you can see the shield here. By the way, another interesting fact about this boat that is now standing in a museum by the Sea of Galilee water is that the wood, the different pieces of wood here, they found 12 different pieces of 12 different trees that created this boat. 12 is a number that we can quote either as Jesus' disciples or the tribes of Israel. So this is another interesting fact. And from this piece of history, we can build a model. So you can see a small model of a boat from the 1st century AD, and in the middle, the area that is exposed for you, you can see the same shield that you saw on the previous picture. So we have an idea of a fisherman boat from the time of Jesus. And with that, let's just show you the Sea of Galilee on a satellite view. Sea of Galilee is below sea level. It's 215 meters below sea level. And when the water level is high as today, so it's 209 meters below sea level. You can see the dimensions over here. I'll show you just some quick pictures of the Sea of Galilee, and then I'll end the presentation. And if you'd like, we'll have time for questions and answers. So that's a satellite view. Those are some pictures that I took during my very, very last travels to the Sea of Galilee, and hopefully we'll have more tourists like you guys coming to visit us with Sharon. Um, that's sunrise. So we're looking towards east. Those are the water as seen from a boat ride. Another picture of sunrise, and this is me saying thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for participating. I really enjoyed your company. I really miss to speak with people. So please feel free to ask me questions. Sharon, you might want to start if you're here.
Thank you, Amit, for that. Every time I see the Galilee region, it makes me want to go back. I've been all over Israel, and as I say, it's my 20th visit next April, God willing. I've traveled from Eilat right up to Jerusalem and all the areas of Israel, but Galilee is my favorite because, as you can see, it's still a natural region. There are not lots of changes and massive buildings that have been built. And yes, some of the villages like Nazareth are now much bigger than they would have been in Jesus' time. And there are churches there, but you need to take that all away, strip it back, and think back to yourself what it would have been like in Jesus' times. And the Bible is so simple. Even Amit's speaking thing there about it. Jesus used the industry of the area. He used the people of the area. He used the roots that were natural at that time to explain to people what he wanted from them. And he took those old rules from the original tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant and the commandments, and he interpreted them to, even then, a modern day to tell people what to do in the Mount of Beatitudes. So it's been amazing for me to go through this. Please feel free. I recognize some of the faces that are on the Zoom tonight, and I know some of you have been there before and probably, like myself, love to even see the pictures. If you haven't been there before, I'm going to hand back to Amit for questions, but join us. Come with us. The tour that I'm taking in April is called Go Tell It on the Mountain. Pretty much taking you through the Galilee region. Amit has just touched on some of the main features, and Capernaum is a very favorite place of mine. Magdala, the Jordan River, Caesarea, Philippi, there are so many things around that region that there are to be seen. So if you haven't been, come with us. But I'm going to hand you back to Amit, and when the questions are over, I'll let Amit finish. And just before I go, I wish to wish Amit and all the people of Israel a very happy new year. This is the year 5781, if I'm correct, in the Jewish calendar last year. And this last weekend, pretty much Israel's weekend is spent in prayer. And I think right now, in our current climate and everything that's happening around us, if we took just even one weekend of prayer to think about our country and our world and why Jesus came here in the first place, to speak to people on that mountain about how they needed to change their lives, because he's already made that way and pathed it for us all. So I'm going to hand you back to Amit. Any questions you have, don't be afraid to ask him. He's an expert, and thanks again, Amit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. All right, so feel free to ask any questions on your mind. Just unmute yourself once you do that. Or if you want to comment on anything that you saw, you don't even have to raise your hand, just unmute yourself. If you're using a PC or a laptop, it's a long press on your spacebar that should unmute yourself, or use the lower left corner, you have the microphone, click on it.
Hi there, just a wee question from me and my mum, watching from Ballymena, Northern Ireland. So it was just if you see there around the whole region, is there anywhere that's completely out of bounds to tourists, as in completely natural from what it was, or is it all pretty much touched by the people nowadays?
So most probably the Beatitudes area, if you remember that picture that I showed, it is similarly to how it used to be back then. Not a lot have changed. Even the main road is still the same main road. So today it's covered with asphalt instead of, I don't know, gravel or whatever was there before. Kfar Nahum, you just saw the synagogue, although ruined. So if it was touched by the hand of God. There was an earthquake over there. The region have not changed dramatically, as even modern villagers that lives there are in very small communities. So you won't find an area that was completely covered by a city unless there was a city there before. I didn't have the chance to speak about Tiberias, for example, but Tiberias was a city that was built during the time of Jesus on this earth. So, and it is possible that even his father, as a carpenter, as a mason, worked in Tiberias. So today, Tiberias is a it's a very big city by the Sea of Galilee, but it used to be a big city in the time of Jesus as well. So I don't think there was a huge change. I hope I answered your questions. Otherwise, just let me know.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much. You can even just comment and say how it was for you, if you enjoyed it or not. All right. So I'd like to thank you all. I'm still open for questions, by the way. I'm not leaving until the last one is leaving. I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank Ron from the Ministry of Tourism for allowing us to give you this opportunity, and I would like to thank Sharon for giving us this opportunity to show you Israel in times of COVID. Hopefully this COVID will go away very, very soon. Hopefully with prayers for Jewish New Year, this would go away. We've just made atonement for our sins here in the land of Israel. So that have ended yesterday at the Day of Atonement. So hopefully with prayers, we would receive different times, and it would be possible to see you face to face here in Israel. I'm looking forward for this. And Naomi, did you raise your hand? Would you like to ask anything? No. All right.
Amit, I was just thinking there as you spoke about the Mount of Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. And one of the things that I noticed when I was in Israel was the mustard seed. That little mustard seed is all the faith that Jesus asked us to have. If we just had the faith, the tiniest bit, like a mustard seed that grows all over Israel. And I never knew what a mustard seed even looked like when it was growing until I went to Israel. And it makes me think now, when you say about your weekend of prayer, how much if every single one of us had just that little bit of faith, because Jesus gave us that when he died for us. He gave us that, and he told us all you need is that little bit of faith. And I think if we had that now, maybe we'd all get through COVID a lot quicker than we think we might. But I think having that faith is all that we need.
Yeah.
Indeed, I agree.
Well said, Sharon.
Amen.
Amit, thank you very much. On behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, I'd like to thank you for doing this. Sharon, thank you very much again for bringing your clients to listen. On behalf of the Israeli government, from the Ministry of Tourism, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's evening virtual tour. And thanks again, Amit.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Amit,
Yes, Patricia.
hi. That was great. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very good indeed. And I'm
Thank you
from the
very
outer
much.
I'm from the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, but I have done a tour before with Sharon's company to Israel, and I do
That's
hope
right.
to come back.
Good.
I'm looking forward to meet you here.
Good.
Okie dokie. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it was great. It was really good. I've enjoyed all these tours that you put on, Sharon. These talks are great.
Thank you. Thank you. We hope to have many more. I think we're going to be doing a few more Zooms over the next few months because that will be our way of contacting people and letting you have a little snapshot of what Israel really looks like.
Oh, it was lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless.
You too.
We're not comfortable with using that Zoom and it's always kind of there's a
All right, so ending this session, I would like to thank you all again and looking forward to see you in the future, hopefully in more virtual tours or real tours with Sharon. And goodbye, everybody. I would bless you in Hebrew, Shana Tova, which is Happy New Year for the Jewish New Year that just begun. Shana Tova, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye.